I'd like to ask us a question, or I'd like to have us explore, perhaps, the answer to a question. We all know, being avid course students, that the world is supposed to be a reflection of how we see ourselves. Well, we say that. And sometimes we even are tempted to believe it's true. But stop for a moment and let's all try to see what kind of a world we consciously say we want. In other words, as you look around the world that you're living in now, how is it different from what you would like it to be? Strictly from an ego perspective, of course, because as I say, the truth is we've got exactly what we want. But we don't trust that. We don't believe that. So the quickest way for us to come into contact with the changes that we would like to see made are by doing what we're doing. What kind of a world would you really like it to be? Peaceful, perhaps? Yes, I'm sure we'd all like it to be peaceful. Well, what did you do to reflect peace to your world today? More loving? Yes.
More accepting.
I'm sure we could all agree that we'd like it to be more loving. Mm-hmm. So ask yourself, what did I do to make this world more loving today?
Love more.
Yesterday. What did I do to reflect that, Jim? You're an extraordinarily loving person. So what did you do? What did you in your world do that made this world be more loving?
Well, I think the fact that I have moved away from that judging, condemning way of life where we look for what's wrong and move more into celebrating what's beautiful.
Okay.
That's lovely.
Okay.
Very nice.
Do you have a specific incident that you'd share with us?
A specific thing that I would share with you? Well,
Do you all see what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Can you understand it?
Mm-hmm.
one thing.
Go ahead, Jim.
One thing that I would share with you that we have 3 children and they're wonderful children, but they're not near us physically. And so out of the blue, so often they seem able to read our mind because whatever we say we think we want shows up. And it, like, I didn't even tell anybody about that, and here it is. And it's a beautiful thing. And then, when we do have a get together and we get together, it's a love fest. There's just, we're not a family that holds grudges or looks for what's wrong, I think.
That's beautiful. And that will make the world a more loving place. Yes. Anybody else?
I think there's no one who attends these meetings on a regular basis and studies the course who's not become a more loving person than they used to be. That doesn't mean that we're loving all the time or that we never judge anybody for anything.
No?
But it's a lot less than it used to be.
I agree with you entirely, Brian. But I'm saying is that most of the time we do not stop and reflect upon that which we do consciously that makes it a more loving place. a more peaceful place.
I'll share. I'm sorry, Brian, were you finished? I read a book. Well, in fact, I got it from Tom and Betty. And I was on Rumi, and one of the 40 principles of love that was listed in the book was hold no bad thoughts about anybody. Never speak, or don't speak evil. You know, like the monkey would don't speak evil about anybody. So I thought, I found myself in a lot of different little groups that seemed to be cropping up. So I thought, I'm going to practice that. I've had the most amazing month of that type of not, and I didn't just start this, but made sure that I didn't join into the talking, because I have other groups, other things, like this person, what are they doing? Or that person, what are they doing? It's things like that. And I said, I don't want to join into that. That's not something. Or if I didn't have to say that, I would just change the subject. Or I didn't always have to say, no, I won't criticize that person or something. All I had to do was to just, change the subject or mention something else or say, yes, but this, or, whatever. And I tell you, I've had, every time we've gotten together now, it's lessened tremendously on that kind of thing. And I know that seems like a very little thing, but it's because when you're in a group of women, it seems that way, and not always, but it's less. We laughed so hard at our last card party, where the card party before that was not like that. And yet this card party was nothing but joy and practically we were falling out of our chairs laughing at all the little stories and things. But they were all positive. They were all fun. They were travel, what you're doing, what you're happening. And I have to say, we've been exceptionally blessed this last month. And it's, I can't contribute it to that, but we do have very beautiful, loving children, and we hold them in love constantly. And it's what you give, you receive, and they tend to
It's a
return that
perfect
love.
example of what I'm talking about.
But it took me a while to really get into it, because it was easier to listen to them, and I didn't know really what to say when someone would start criticizing someone. I didn't know how to back away from it and yet not be criticizing that person that was saying it. That was the big thing for me. How do you not buy into it, what they're saying, and not also make them wrong for saying it? Because they're not. They're just communicating what they think they want to communicate. So it was a real transition for me. Real big.
For anybody, Sally. Thank you.
Welcome. I didn't talk about it because I didn't think I really mastered it, but I'm getting there.
So you didn't say when they started criticizing someone, well, that's odd, they speak very highly of you.
No, I don't think that from now on. Now, Jim would do that, but I don't think that way.
I'm glad I heard that.
I'll tell you what I've done is that I'm more aware of my thoughts pretty much all the time. And if I'm having an ego-based thought, I try to just say no thought, to let spirit know that I don't want to put any energy into this thought. And when I say that to myself, it goes away. Now, my friend Steve, the computer guy, he used to come here, he says delete. Works for you. Another lady I know says she pictures the trash can on the computer. Whatever. Just to let spirit know that I don't want to embrace this thought. Works.
One thing I do, and it just kind of started happening spontaneously, and it's a small thing, but I kind of noticed it a couple weeks ago, is when I'm out and about, like just in the grocery store, I'll greet people and say, good morning, how are you, how's it going? Converse with the cashier, how's your summer going, what are you going to do that's fun? And things like that. So I'm just more, I'd say, open and communicative with people than I used to be, and I try to be that in a positive way.
That's great, Mary. Well, yes.
It was thanks to you, actually, this morning, since I had your manuscript, and I started reading some of it. That's why I decided to call. I got to come see this group. And after I had read through some, and of course we're a little earlier here than Catch Camp, so I was waiting for my girlfriend to wake up. We talk at least once or twice a day. And because of some stuff that was going on, in which I let her reel out the story of what was going on, and they said, well, I quit thinking about you on this. So I read her the number 1 lesson, the day 1 in your manuscript, which was perfect. And then I followed with some other things that I was writing about that came out of that. But the line that I really rose the chuckle out of her and me too is the one that said that whenever you have good thoughts, open your mouth and let them out. And whenever you have something that is not so good, hit the delete button. And I think that says a lot to be able to start watching it. And it just reminds me of something I was teaching some classes and things that I teach, or whenever I'm working with somebody, is that whenever you hear yourself saying something like, oh, this pain, I've got this pain, I've always had this, and they start in on that, and I go, okay, up until now, go cancel, cancel when you hear that, because that's our communication line. I go, cancel, cancel. Now you can't say, oh no, I feel fine, because the body says, who the heck are you kidding? But you can say, up until now, and the body says, that's true.
Good thought.
And every day and every way, I'm feeling better and better, this and that's happening. So you start planting the seeds of thoughts that you want to have plant and grow in your garden. So I always say with your communication line, it's right here, it's an actual physical thing in your body to just say, cancel, cancel, when you find yourself saying something. Great.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. Your the whole bunch got relayed this morning to Catch Can, Alaska.
One of my favorite places. Caught my biggest salmon up there.
Ah,
We were up there doing a
where were you?
sharing in Ketchikan.
In Catch Can.
And
I commercial fished up there in Bristol Bay and Cook Inlet up in the Bering Sea.
I have no idea where we were.
But I lived a lot in Catch Can.
How big was the salmon? 42 pounds, and what did you catch him on? Or it?
Yeah, probably a piece of squid.
Yeah, I'm going up there, we're going up there in a couple.
Was that a king?
Yeah.
You must have caught a king. Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, I was just at Country
I've got a
Market,
picture of it.
and it was $39.95 a pound. You know how much that fish was worth that you caught? $39.95 a pound for king.
Copper River's down to just about $10 a pound.
And Popper River, they said, was close to $100 a pound when they had it in there.
Really?
Well,
Wow.
I said,
Central Market, it was 40-something, but at Costco, Copper River is down to 11-something.
The UFC started at 40, but now they're down to 10, so you want to wait.
I still like the ones where I used to, I don't anymore, because I just can't bring myself to kill them. But I used to go down in front of our house. We live right next door to Tom and Patty. Go down and fish off the beach and catch a nice salmon and just clean it and toss it up, and Linda would start cooking it.
You don't like to fish anymore.
Pardon me?
You don't enjoy fishing anymore. I know.
Yes, anyway.
Yeah.
I'm that way too. I used to be a big fisherman. I don't do it at all anymore. I don't want to kill anything anymore.
Well, I can't even catch and release because I feel sorry for them when I catch them.
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
I've got thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
That's not something I like to do now.
Just had a grandson come to visit with his son, or a son come to visit with his son, who is our grandson. And he loved to be down on the beach. And he was here when he was a much smaller boy and caught a salmon. So I'm asking myself on this visit when he was here, why there seemed to be some, or what I could do to create a better sense of camaraderie with him. And brother said, there's something that stands out in your mind, an experience you had with your grandfather. I thought about it for a minute, and then I remembered that he had given me a silver dollar in a money clip holder. And that and it was about this, when I was about that age. And it was like, oh my goodness, how much I loved that. So I went in, started rummaging around the drawer in my bedroom, and sure enough, I came across an old box, and I had a silver dollar in there. So that's what I was able to give to him. And we did, connected it. So it's not always something spiritual that happens. It's something that just comes from your heart. And the meaning you have as you give it is the meaning it will have as it's received. Anyone else?
It's interesting you say that, because Edgar Casey talked about, I forget exactly what it was, some sort of an apparatus that he said would help with health. But he said when it was important, when you manufactured this piece of equipment, that you were in a loving spot.
Yes.
Because that was going to carry over to the person who was going to use it.
Exactly. And a person who was not in that frame of mind couldn't have it. That's another truism.
Yeah.
As hard as that is to understand, they simply would pass it by. That's one of Linda's favorite sayings from the Course, giving and receiving are the same.
That one, and love is the answer regardless of the question.
Regardless of the
It's one of my
question.
favorites.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so what did I do today to make the world more loving? I think the first thing that I did was I kept my word to myself when I got out of bed this morning.
Who was
And I
it?
did to do my course lesson before anything else.
Oh.
That's been a tough discipline for me. Because I get up and start putzing around. Because I have so many things on my agenda, and it always gets attended, but not always first thing. And that's something I really want to shift. So I started with that, and then from there, which felt wonderful. I mean, both the lesson, of course, and the meditation that goes with the lesson, but also just following through was something I promised myself to follow through on. And then also, I guess that's also loving. From there, I went to my altar, which is another practice that I started a couple of months back and spent 10 minutes in meditation there, which also has to do with, it's kind of a meditation / prayer, where I have a lot of people's pictures there that I'm praying for. And it's really just being so grateful to God, while I'm there. And for the silence and the time, for nothing but that. Just not having any movement and just focal pointing there. Which really helps to fill my cup and help me be more in balance. So that I seem to speak kinder and deal with things and with more equanimity. And then as the morning went on, at some point, Tristan got up, and this is interesting too. It's also definitely created, I feel, love, and certainly in our atmosphere, which adds to the world. He wanted to get a haircut. So he went over to this little place right by where we live, and before I knew it, he was already back to the house. Seemed like he'd been gone 30 seconds, He said, the place is just full of guys waiting to get their haircut. I don't think I'm going to make it before work. And I said, oh, okay, so when do they open? It was 11 o'clock. o'clock. And he says, 10. And I said, oh, okay, so if you get there at 10, you'll be sure to get your hair cut next time. And he kind of argued with me a little bit, and I couldn't understand what he was arguing about. He said, I'm not sure if you heard me. And then he's quiet. So a few minutes later, we both moved to the couch to sit down and share together before he's going to work, and I'm going to go do my thing. And I turn and I look at him, and I go, oh, he's just pissed. You know, he's just totally pissed. And it was so obvious. I almost wanted to laugh like I'm laughing now because it was just so there, you know, and I'm looking at him, and I just adore him, and I just love him so much. And I said, oh, and I said, you're mad at me? And he goes, no. And he says, I'm irritated because you're prying into me with your eyes right now. And I said, honey, I don't, and I did laugh. I said, I don't have to pry. It's all over your face. He pissed at me, you know. He said, well, you just said, you know. And I just said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, darling, that I said something that somehow seemed so irritating. And I said, that wasn't my intention. I guess I was being mom, you know, forgive me or whatever. And I really felt such joy somehow in it that he just started smiling, just beaming, you know. And he just got so sweet and soft. He just said, I'm so sorry, Mom, for getting irritated. You know, I'm sorry I'm irritating sometimes to you. You know, it's hard taking it from your mom, you know. And then it just was like this kind of mush fest, you know. And sometimes we go that way, not every time. Sometimes it takes us a while to get there. We don't fight for very long if we do. But it's so nice when it can go so directly like that. You know, it's really lovely.
There are many ways forgiveness works.
There's many ways, yeah.
Who else? Anybody?
I had an aggravation yesterday, and I knew it was ego, and I knew I had to be willing to let go. And at the time, it was just swelling up. But it is getting easier, you know. But boy, the ego's pretty, you know, I was going along just the happiest, you know, and this come up, and I go, whoa, you know, okay. Thanks a lot.
Well, you should be.
I know, and that's what I said to myself. Well, you should be thankful because you can work through it.
That was priceless. Now you do feel thankful though, right? You look thankful.
I'm still aggravated with you. With the whole, now I'm aggravated with me too.
One of the greatest gifts that we can give each other, give ourselves really, is when we go through a circumstance like that, and you come out the other end, and if there's just the smallest part of your mind that says, yeah, I do feel better. I do feel, yes. Yes, I do feel better.
I know.
Because the next time, it's still there.
Yeah.
You know what we do at that time? We go, if you can't find the humor in the situation, cosmic joke, stand back, take a look and see if you can't find the humor, and not being able to find the humor in the situation. And if you can't, step back again and see if you can't find the humor, and you're not being able to find the humor, or not being able to find the humor, until you can finally find the humor.
Just think of Sam.
That's pretty funny right there. Yeah.
By the time you get all the way across the parking lot.
Yeah.
Get that distance from it.
Oh.
You know, it seems to me me, as I'm listening to all of this, that what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of improvement in the quality of our lives as a result of following the pathway of the Course in this world. And that's, the conundrum is that it's not the purpose of the Course. The Course's goal is to get us out of this world. Yeah, I feel more comfortable as I'm listening to people because this is kind of where I'm at. Is the Course has really improved my participation with the Course, my working with the Course has improved the quality of my life in this world. And for that, I'm eternally thankful.
I can remember, Roger, one time, and I haven't had this thought come back to me in a long, long time, but I can remember very early on in my experience with Jesus that I made some comment that must have been somewhat critical of the world. And he asked me, he said, what's wrong with the world? And I said, well, you're always saying, I need to get myself out of this world, etc., etc. I said, no. You're misunderstanding. There is only one world. The only thing that ever changes is the way you see it. And I thought, wow. Wow. No excuses. No excuses. No different world to run to. Always just dependent upon how I see it.
And that affects so much how we respond then to life.
Yes.
So much. I think sometimes I put really pressure on myself and then can create unhappiness out of that or unlovingness out of that. And probably a lot of us do that. Pressure to be a certain something or do things a certain way.
I call that shooting on myself.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it has a lot of disguises,
Yeah.
But that's actually another thing I did today was I saw that, and because I have some classes I'm teaching coming up, and I was feeling like the schedule's too overloaded. It's too many all at once. Like I need more time, just for me, not just to get classes organized, but just for me. I just need more spaciousness there. And so I'm on my way to meet with the gal in administration of some of this stuff, and I had picked this card earlier with Tristan after we had our thing on the couch. We have this deck called Grace cards, and they are just grace, so we each picked one, and mine said listen. So I'm driving then on my way to meet this gal to talk scheduling, and I just keep hearing, do some of them later. Do them a month or two down the line. What do you got to do now for? Just all the way there, and I hadn't dawned on me. I don't know why. Just hadn't, because nothing's locked in, everything can still be played with. And so that's what I did, and it just feels wonderful. It just feels wonderful. Like that was a loving decision. It seems simple, but it's somehow a big deal for me.
Good work, honey. Yeah. Who else has anything they'd like to bring up? Anything at all?
Well, over the past year, which has been a very rough year, all of my 6 children have been very attentive and very loving, and it's been an amazing experience for the whole year. So it's given me a lot of thought, mostly kind of a thankfulness. It's just sort of always, no matter how I felt, nevertheless, I felt thankful because here I have these 6 amazing children, and they're always there for me, and it's just been such a rewarding experience. And so I reflected, well, how can I feel as bad as I feel and yet I feel thankful? It's kind of like, this is incongruous. How can I make any sense out of that? Well, I haven't been able to make any real sense out of it, but that's the way it's been. So, until it changes, I guess.
That's the effect of a split mind, Sam.
Yeah, sure is.
When you're in it, each one will seem to be predominant.
Each one will seem to be predominant.
When you're in it,
When I'm what?
when you are in that particular
Oh, in that, yeah.
point of view from whichever side of your mind you're in, that side will appear to be predominant.
Probably so, because you can't have the identical thought at the same time, especially incongruous thoughts. Yeah, so it's got to be one or the other, so that's kind of that's a puzzle.
It is a puzzle, but it helps me a lot. Instead of trying to judge which one is real or which one is right and which one is wrong, to judge which one is real and which one is not.
That's a good thought.
Yeah, which side of my mind thinks really, and which side of my mind is just totally involved with the ego. You see, what we have to do, all of what this is about, is teaching us that within us there is a God self. There is another self. And that other self happens to be the side of ourself that always thinks with God.
The capital S one.
And we all have it. It's impossible not to have it. So teaching ourselves that it's there and making the decision to use it is what our practicing and what our learning is all about.
Tristan and I were talking about this. I can't even remember what the situation was that we were speaking about, and it was basically a split mind, like we were examining ourselves, right, in relation to the situation. And he used, and I love it because I love this part of the course, so he kept using the phrase, oh, so you mean like when you're looking at it from above the battleground? I said, yeah. And then there, and then there's here. That,
What does that
that
mean?
is so they can't even see what's
That's right.
here. They're just totally
What
discordant.
does that mean above the battleground? Where is the battleground? What is the battleground?
Right here.
It's in the mind. Yeah. It's projection.
Yes.
It seems like you can switch too from one side of the mind to the other in a heartbeat.
You can.
Yeah. Yeah. Both ways.
Yeah.
Shun shun, which is good news for getting clear.
Anything else? Any other experiences you want to share? Anything? If not, I'd kind of like to do the lesson. This is one of the most powerful lessons in the course today.
Reason and madness?
Somebody have a page number?
Page 342 in the workbook, lesson 183.
Oh, yeah.
Did anybody ever see Linda's book?
Oh, you said.
Mine was like that, and I recently
Yours is so well organized.
tried to
All the little tabs are labeled.
Tom is much neater.
not really.
He's got all his reduced.
I said, Tom.
That's why Tom used tiny tabs.
343 and 4.
I call upon God's name
You got your
and on my own. Yeah, let's take that off. Okay, let's go through it paragraph by paragraph and discuss anything that needs to be talked about. First of all, I call upon God's name and on my own. What do you suppose he really means by that?
There's no difference.
Okay, it's enough said. That says it all, right? Yes.
This is the only lesson I've done this year. Because I downloaded on my phone the lessons. Somebody told me the other day to do that. And so today I remembered to do that. It was about 2 hours ago. And I turned to this lesson and did it. I don't ever remember reading this lesson before.
You don't.
But it really spoke to me in paragraph 2 where it says God's name cannot be heard without response. Emmett Fox wrote a book on the 10 Commandments. And he said the commandment that says, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain," means that you can't call upon God without getting an answer. Doesn't mean don't cuss.
No, that's true.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I
I'm glad I told you the chat.
I've been forgiven. I don't know what I did. Better.
Eddie, would you start us off?
Okay. I call upon God's name and on my own. God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. To call upon his name is but to call upon your own. A father gives his son his name, and thus identifies the son with him. His brothers share his name, and thus are they united in a bond to which they turn for their identity. Your father's name reminds you who you are, even within a world that does not know, even though you have not remembered it.
In other words, we can make up any kind of excuses we want. It simply doesn't matter because we changed nothing. Any comments? Sam?
God's name cannot be heard without response, nor said without an echo in the mind that calls you to remember. Say his name, and you invite the angels to surround the ground on which you stand, and sing to you as they spread out their wings to keep you safe, and shelter you from every worldly thought that would intrude upon your holiness.
Comments?
That's a
I
beautiful,
just absolutely love it.
it's a beautiful paragraph.
Yeah.
This upcoming paragraph is perhaps my favorite paragraph in the whole course.
And I gotta read it, the pressure's on.
Well, it tells us too that our worldly thoughts intrude upon our holiness. Our worldly thoughts, the ego's thoughts.
Yeah.
Repeat God's name and all the world responds by laying down illusions. Every dream the world holds dear has suddenly gone by. And where it seemed to stand, you find a star, a miracle of grace. The sick arise, healed of their sickly thoughts. The blind can see, the deaf can hear. The sorrowful cast off their mourning, and the tears of pain are dried as happy laughter comes to bless the world.
Yes.
That's the world I want.
Yes.
Happy laughter comes to bless the world. That the last words just, wow.
That is beautiful.
When I read that, I had the thought of the message you got from Brother about the having you join his mind as to what he experienced when he left the cross. When it says, every dream the world holds dear has suddenly gone by, and where it seemed to stand you find a star.
Ah, I remember that now, Tom. Thank you.
Because you talked about the light and there was nothing but light that you had expected to see a world, and from his perspective.
I was talking to a friend on the phone, and he said something about Jesus' last thoughts when he was on the cross. And in my mind, this image appeared of the cross and the other crosses around him, of the people who were being crucified with him. I knew I was watching his last conscious moments on the earth. And I guess without really realizing it, I thought that what I would see would be he would disappear. And there would just be this flash of light. And instead what I saw was the world disappeared. And he was just this beautiful shining light. But it wasn't him that went, it was the world that left. And it's always been so significant for me.
So in a sense, you could interpret that as saying we are each a star. In our reality, that light.
That's nice.
Yes. Yes.
Repeat the name of God, and little names have lost their meaning. No temptation but becomes a nameless and unwanted thing before God's name. Repeat his name and see how easily you will forget the names of all the gods you value. They have lost the name of God you gave them. They become anonymous and valueless to you. Although before you let the name of God replace their little names, you should before them worshipfully. You stood before them worshipfully, naming them as gods.
Any comments?
I want to go back to where it says the tears of pain are dried. You know, I've been there, the tears of pain, and I think most everybody has. It really bothers me to see people hurting like I was. I am so grateful to have been led to recovery from alcoholism and to groups like this, because that pain is a long ways in my past today. I can still feel it if I want to, but I don't want to. And I feel like, and I'm sure this is true of all of us, that I have been led here. This didn't just happen by accident. I got on my knees back in 1984 when I was right at the end of my rope, what we call hitting bottom. And I said to this God I didn't believe in, please help me. And I've gotten that help ever since.
And you've given that help, Brian.
Pardon me?
You've given that help to so many others.
That's the only way I can ever pay back the people who helped me. Just to keep it going, pay it forward. But I didn't really think that would work because I didn't believe in God. But it wasn't very long until I found myself in an AA meeting, which totally turned my life around. And it's still going on. You know, A friend of mine in the program said, God loves me enough to have brought me this far, but he loves me too much to leave me here. Isn't that a great statement?
It is beautiful.
Yeah. We haven't arrived yet, you know. We're gonna keep being led to wherever it is we need to go.
I think to add to that is a statement in the Course here, God's will for us is perfect happiness. And wherever we end up, hopefully it will be perfect happiness. And that's a lovely thing to expect, because if you expect it, you will find it, and you'll look for it, and you'll become it.
And that's a long ways from the tears of pain.
I remember one night when we were still in Colorado. Linda and I were standing in the kitchen doing dishes, and she suddenly stopped and turned around and looked at me. She said, I just heard God say something to me. And I said, what was that? And she said, I was feeling a little depressed, and I heard him say, if I took care of you when you didn't know me, why would I not take care of you now?
Yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten all about that. It wasn't just me. We were going through one of those disaster financial situations.
I had a lot of those.
Well, but they're good. They always lead to a good end, because he's a very clever entrepreneur. So I don't think you ever worked for anybody else, have you? Pardon?
Not much. Okay, Millie?
Well, that particular passage that you just read reminded me of something else that I read in your book that I read this morning. And I'm sitting here trying to think what it was. It was like 3 or 4 words, and I can't remember that part, but I remember what it's about. And that was ultimately where you gave your energy today. How much did you think about God? Or how much did you adhere to the ego? It was towards the beginning, but it was like 3 or 4 words.
Yeah, when you say that you want God more than the ego,
Right.
but look at how many things you did to confirm God today, as opposed
That was it. I love
to
that.
confirm the ego.
And that's, to me, is what this just said. So, repeat the name of God and call upon yourself. Whose name is His? Repeat His name, and all the tiny nameless things on earth slip into right perspective. Those who call upon the name of God cannot mistake the nameless for the name, nor sin for grace, nor bodies for the Holy Son of God. And should you join a brother as you sit with him in silence and repeat God's name along with him, within your quiet mind, you have established there an altar which reaches to God Himself and to His Son.
Yeah?
Practice but this today. Repeat God's name slowly again and still again. Become oblivious to every name but His. Hear nothing else. Let all your thoughts become anchored on this. No other word we use except at the beginning when we say today's idea but once. And then God's name becomes our only thought, our only word, the only thing that occupies our mind, the only wish we have, the only sound with meaning, and the only name of everything that we desire to see, of everything that we would call our own.
Wow.
Seems as we're reading through this, I'm reflecting back on the spiral that you talked about some time ago. Seems like we're talking about these different levels of the spiral and getting pretty high up.
I think what it's talking about is that line in the middle of the spiral that is the miracle line that shoots us up
Yeah.
directly without having to go all the circuitous routes as much. I think it's a direct path it's trying to lead us to here.
Yeah, I was thinking of Brian's, that would be part of the spiral, and then this is the direct path.
Just, I found that when that finished, saying that I just felt this breath of relief, of peace. That was like, it just felt good internally.
Those are the moments you know you've connected to the God self.
I'm sorry.
Those are the moments that you know you are connected to the God self.
Yes.
You know, I think it's the quote that I sent out yesterday, I'm not sure, the last few days, from Wayne Dyer. He tells a story about when he was a young boy riding the bus in Detroit, and the buses were so full, I can remember that too. He had to hang on to the strap that was hanging down from the ceiling, And he said he likened that to his connection with God, hanging onto that strap. And when he realized that things weren't going well in his life, he knew he'd let go of the strap. And all he had to do was reach up and grab it again. Isn't that
That's a
great?
nice metaphor. isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Our daughter likened that to the handles like on the SUVs because they go off-road. There's the handles that are up on the side, or she calls them the oh shit handles. That's sometimes where I have to go before I really call for help.
That's kind of funny. It reminds me that we're aware that God's around us, but when we don't need Him, we don't think of it, or her, or it, or whatever you want to call it. And it's only when something occurs that seems so negative, and we remember love, or God, or whatever we want to call this, and we respond from that place. And years later, we look back on that and say, that's one of the best things that ever happened to me. And it was not really a pleasant thing, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Wouldn't it be mainly because we actually called in earnest and knew we received the answer, that we experienced a connection directly with our feeling of God?
I think because it turns out to be one of the best things because it brings us back to who we really are. It brings us back to God. We've let our thoughts drift, or whatever you want to say.
That's a good word.
And then so that experience all of a sudden brings us back to who we really are. Lets us be open to that.
It's kind of where I say it's like, out of what I've found is that out of some of my greatest joys have come my greatest pain, and out of my greatest pains have come some of my greatest joys.
It also seems to me that to some degree, especially as course students, and we have a practice like this that we're attending to every day, we start to form that relationship with God more often, other than just when we feel we need. Our need for God shifts, like needing God from when I wake up in the morning, kind of a thing, right? Needing God. That's why we do this. And it doesn't mean all hell has to be broken loose to sit down with our course. It's just a sense of it's time to be with us and be with God and go inside, and that's a lovely realization. A lovely realization.
I'd like to share a story that's somewhat similar. And this was during the Vietnamese War, I think it was. We took in some refugee children, and they're still part of our family. And one of the boys, when we were trying to find ways to help the people that were coming into the United States, and there really wasn't any organization for doing that, and it was really kind of discouraging. And finally we went...
Catholic Relief
Catholic Relief.
and Lutheran Social Services.
Yeah, Lutheran, so found that they were taking children in with, that didn't have families with them. And so we indicated that we were interested in taking it. We already had 4 kids, so one more was nice. So we went to pick up H-U-I, and pronounced we, and at Lutheran Social Services, I think it was. And he just had a big grin on his face. And later, when he could speak English, he said, when he saw Tom, he knew he was going to be okay because he had a dream. And on that dream, as I said, he saw Tom and he knew he was going to be okay, so he was going to be safe. And he was so relieved to see Tom when he got there. And I just think, love has a power that we can't always see, but if we pay attention, we can experience it in beautiful, many, many ways. And what we send out, we may never know what effect it has on others, but it does.
And even further through we and whoever he touches in his life, and so on and so on and so on. So in the beginning of the course, it's one of the things that it said in the 50 principles may have effects that you never know about.
Yeah, right.
And that's so apparent in his children. Just they're such an extension of him.
Two kids who are brilliant and going into some of the highest education levels. And I thought, here's this immigrant kid, he couldn't even speak English when he got here. I thought, that's quite a miracle.
Well, you gave him the opportunity to do that.
We did, of course, we gave them support and love and whatever we could, but they took advantage of realizing that there was no limit. And I think that's so beautiful. I don't know if we taught them that or they figured it out themselves.
He used to tell us about when he would get up from the table, he'd wait until nobody was looking, and he'd take a piece of bread or something and put it in his pocket. To take it
Just in
in his
case.
bed,
Yeah.
make sure.
Yeah.
If this wasn't really true,
That was before he was with us, wasn't it?
Did he ever tell you that he had prayed, that this was an answer to prayer? Sometimes you can see an answer to prayer after I wonder what his prayers were before.
I think when he saw Tom, he recognized him and
That
from
he
a
had
dream.
answered to prayer.
Yeah, he'd
Yeah.
seen him in a dream and knew he was going to be all right. Miracles happen.
Back to what you said, what triggered was when you said, it's like if we're feeling good and we don't need it, then it's not there. And what I found is kind of like what I used to tell, that the more aware, the more healthy you start working on or becoming or whatever, and what you're putting in your body, that pretty soon you don't get away with what you used to get away with because it gets you real quick. And I find it the same way with this. The more aware I become, the more light it sheds on the stuff I can't get away with anymore.
Well, do you want to get away with him anymore?
Huh?
Do you want to get away with him anymore?
Not really.
No, there's times. No, I've been doing, I really feel where I really met a lot of resistance and anger. It was coming up as being angry at what was going on 24 hours a day in here in consciousness. It was so much that's been working on me. And so, yes, I have found it brought up anger that I didn't know I had. So there's sometimes that I said, enough's enough, stop. But in the end, I'm always grateful. Not always in the process.
Do you ever feel like that's because like sometimes I feel like it's because our awareness is deepening and expanding as we mature with our practice. And so we're more and more subtly aware of just what we weren't aware of before. So that's why it seems like there's more and there's more and there's more.
More and more.
It's always there, but we couldn't sense it. We couldn't
And
see
now
it.
more sensitized to the point where it's like
It's a lot. It's
raw at times.
Right.
It says, I say, okay, bring it on, let's get this, and then it's like, whoa, slow down. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like the course advances, the course that you're on advances in degrees of what it's going to feel like and what you feel you have to deal with.
Scott, would you like to?
I think along that line, that I think life is kind of like a process of constant disclosure. And of course, and sometimes the disclosures are kind of astounding, you know. One was just a simple little reading that I had of a research the other day that said that 30% of the time that what you're looking at is looked at by your spouse. The identical item. And I thought to myself, I've noticed that for years with Peggy. I said, I'll be looking at a sign. I'm usually unconscious when I drive, which is not a good idea, but but I'm thinking about thoughts, you know. I'm not looking at anything out there. So I go from this point to that point, and I don't know what's in between, really. Peggy is the exact opposite. She notices everything. But every now and then I come out of my mystical state, and I'll see something along the road. And I'll point to her and say, well, did you notice that, Peggy? She was looking at the same thing. And I thought that was just something that was sort of between us. But then this research said, no, that's not true at all. 30% of the time, you're looking at exactly the same thing that somebody else was. And they also worked with a chimpanzee. And they found that 10% of the time, the chimp is actually looking at the same thing that you're looking at too. So, but anyway, I struck me and I thought, how do you explain that? Huh?
What is that an illustration of?
What does it do?
What is it an illustration of?
One mind. That we're all of one mind, and this course there's a reinforcement of that idea. And it seems kind of mysterious, except within that context. That there's one mind, and some of the time you're reminded of it. I like that.
So our monkey mind is aware of our whole mind 10% of the time.
Yeah, even the monkey is.
I just watched this morning.
Yeah.
You know, one of those things when things kick up on your phone and you're going, all this stuff's there. Well, believe it or not, on the scale of what you just were talking about, on America's Got Talent, and it came up on that as to, totally different than anything I've ever seen on it. But it comes out with this guy. They come out, somebody else carries out this chair, rocking chair, with a cover over it. And so they're going, "Ew, what's this about?" And then this guy, they come out and there's this old doll. So he tells the story about how somebody that died in this chair in this hotel, and then somebody else that stayed in that room, they died, and other people died, and how this hotel burns down to the ground, and then it winds up this, the only thing that came out of it was this chair. And as a kid, so they asked him, well, when did you start feeling things? When he would feel things and old things as a kid. He said, if I saw a fork, he said, I didn't just see a fork, I saw the last meal that person ate with that fork, going through antique stores and all this stuff. Anyway, so then it's talking about this doll, so then he says, okay, and he picks one of the judges, a gal, to come up and sit in the chair. And they're all getting real spooky in here, and all the audience you see is all spooky. And what he does, which I appreciate because I'm also a hypnotherapist, I almost saw him did it when he just simply had her arms down, and he takes this doll and he's put the blindfold on the girl first, and then he is just doing something like when I touch, when I this or that, whenever he would physically do it, she would raise her hand. And so he was doing it where he wasn't actually touching her, but he was thinking it. And so, because I teach some things around this, so that she would raise her hand. And they're going like, because he never touched her. And so then pretty soon he just touches the doll, where it just goes like this very dramatically. And he touches the doll. And it's like he has the doll attached to her so that he can just think something with the doll, and she does it. So that kind of connection, because it is something that I teach very quickly, is how quickly people can see how our thoughts absolutely affect each other and how connected we are. Huh?
Voodoo.
But to see it on that show, of something that was totally different than anything, you just watched everybody in the audience, they were planning, they were just like this, and I was looking at this and I went, it's obvious what's going on.
We've been married 50 years next month, and my wife knows all my thoughts all the time. It's like our cats. When you want to take your cat to the vet, you got to clear your mind. Otherwise, when you come in the room, they know.
They
it's
do.
that way with my wife. She'll say, "Don't do it." Right, I will.
You know what's spooky about that? She probably knew 5 years in. Not 50.
Right.
It didn't take her 50 to do that.
Patty said she doesn't want to go into mind, into my mind.
I can't help it, sometimes it just happens, and it's like, oh.
She said, you go there, that's okay, but keep that all to yourself.
Anybody else? Scott?
Thus do we give an invitation which can never be refused. And God will come and answer it himself. Think not he hears the little prayers of those who call on him with names of idols cherished by the world. They cannot reach him thus. He cannot hear requests that he be not himself, or that his son receive another name than his.
Did you ever wonder why, when you asked for something and you didn't get it? Why, when we're learning here that all you have to do is ask? And so you ask for something and you don't get it. What causes that?
Because you're not really asking in our real God's name.
Because you're asking for something that would make you not yourself.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's why golf is such a spiritual game. I mean, you'll hear it all the time. Oh, God! You'll hear it all the time out there.
You're more than that.
You ever
But what about when you ask and you do receive something, and then you ask again another time and you don't?
Well, the one time you were in a place to where the answer that you got would connect you with your God self, and the next time you weren't.
I had a very interesting experience like this. I'm a real estate agent, and I'm on the realtor's tour of the new listings up around Kingston. And I go into 2 houses in a row that are $550,000. This is about 15 years ago. So I'm walking out of one, walking back to my car by myself, and I said, okay, God, I'd like to have a sale on a $550,000 house. The next day I was sitting floor duty in the office, and the phone rang, and so I got all the phone calls. So this person asked me about a house we had listed up in Hansville, $550,000. They wanted to see it. I said, when would you like to see it? They said, right now, we're parked right in front of it. I said, I was in Paulsville. I said, give me a half an hour. So I was there in a half an hour. I showed those people that house. I never showed them another house. They paid $550,000 for it, and I wrote it up that day. I would say that was an answer.
Did you remember to thank God?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But I've had other instances similar to that where it didn't happen.
Do you notice a difference? The one that you just talked about, you just sound the way you described yourself. And when you said it, you just felt so clear to me. As if you were just so congruous that things manifested, like really in alignment.
I
You
don't-
notice if
I
the
didn't
other,
notice there was
if
a-
the other times you didn't feel as congruous or as clear about,
No, I didn't notice any difference.
you don't notice any difference. Interesting.
Maybe someone else had asked for another $550,000 sale and they got it instead of you. It could be, right? Not yours. There's no limit. Well, there is another one. Because we're all one, so we're actually all getting it. There you go. Right? If we're all
Did you
one.
ever ask him that? Did you ever have that conversation again? Say, okay, God, I'd like to have this. Okay.
I know the times when
Interesting.
I'm real clear on something.
Yeah, there's this clarity
That-
that's just like,
And I forget how powerful that is. And
Yeah.
recent, and it had been quite a while because something that I was, and because a lot of people, including myself, lost everything. And so I hadn't done it in years. And I remember down at Planet Fitness, it's right by my place, and I went in there and they were going to do a grand reopening. And they had this 55-inch smart TV up there. And they were going to do all these drawings and stuff for when they did. I went, I want that TV for my healing center that I was planning to just open. And then I went on, and anyway, it was like several weeks later, and I forgot about it because I remember thinking, oh no, I'm going to be teaching a class that day, and I probably won't come in. And I was teaching a class at Unity. And so, long story short, I go back, and that morning I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to go do some errands, and I'll run by and do a quick workout, and then I'll go home. Well, I got there, and here they've got the mayor out there, and here's a gal in a long evening gown, and a guy in a tux, and they got all these chairs and booths and all this stuff going on. And I went, oh, shoot, I forgot about that. I go in, and the gal said, don't you want a ticket for that, for the drawings and stuff? And I said, oh, what time is it going to be? And she said, oh, not, within another half hour or so. I said, okay. So I get a ticket. I said, yes, I want that TV. And so I go out, I'm standing next to a guy. Oh, first of all, I come out and I'm talking with the co-founders. They were up here from Florida. And she's standing there. Well, her and I get to really communicating. And I said something about, I want that TV. So then we're out, and I'm talking next to this really neat guy next to me, young black man. And I had introduced myself already, and we were talking, and I said, I want that TV. So when they go to drawing, he's going, Millie, Millie, Millie. And I'm thinking, why wasn't he doing it for himself? Well, then they had him go up and lead exercise. He'd come up from Florida with them. And so then she's doing the drawing for all these other things, and I'm going, don't use my ticket, don't use my ticket. And then she goes for the TV, and she turns, she looks at me, and she says, I know, Millie, you want this TV. I have so much energy going for this TV. And so this guy, they draw, and this great big guy right behind me wins it. So they take pictures of him and everything else and do all this. And then I go up and I said, you got my TV, I wanted that for my new healing center. And he said, oh, I have a good TV, you can have it. Wow. 55-inch brand new TV in the box. I was so clear. And afterwards I thought it felt so familiar with what I have done, when I've known that I've used it more unconsciously, or a lot of times when I know I'm going to win something, and I do. But I haven't for a long time because of a tremendous amount of pain and loss for a lot that went with it, and I hadn't done that in quite a few years. And when I did that, it was like remembering the truth of what the power is. So,
Yeah.
thank you for allowing me to share that.
It's just,
Brian? Oops, sorry.
no, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
love.
Well, I just was saying, well, this is a Course in Miracles.
Huh?
I was just thinking as you said that, well, this is a Course in Miracles. And there it
Yeah,
is.
well, it definitely was. Or that thing about, if there's something wrong, if miracles are not, that's natural. That it's unnatural when they're not happening,
Yes, interesting.
that whole thing.
It used to be that I didn't understand that statement, there's no difficulty in miracles. And I would think, yeah, there is. But I really, as it went along, I realized that it wasn't the ones that I thought were minute turned out to be the biggest blessings. When you change your mind about something, and yes, right at the time it might have seemed like, you just changed your mind about it and things flowed. But it actually blessed your life continuously from there on.
Miracles are natural.
Yeah.
Isn't it
Yeah.
say that someplace?
But getting something like, so you think, no, I really want this, like the TV, and it was wonderful, it was a wonderful gift. But that's a little thing, that's a thing. And that blessed your life at that moment and blessed your studio. But the change of mind keeps you going. That's the way I felt. And I really struggled with that. In fact, it took me a long time. I must have read those 50 Principles of Miracles a million times because I just couldn't, I really was struggling with that. And I began to see while I got great joy, and goodness knows having the car paid off and getting a new computer has been wonderful. But it's not, it's the love behind it that really pays. And I could hear that in you when you were saying, the love behind that.
And the look behind, it was just like huge, everybody, just the gift of how it was, because they said, hey, you gotta keep it here another day because I don't get the key for the center till tomorrow. And the point was to be able to have a place to do, like, Course in Miracles and to teach other classes and all that kind of stuff. So, anyway, it was just, and the guy wouldn't, it was just for him, it was like, it was just natural.
Do we have time for one more example?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick. About 10 years ago, I developed a disease called erythromalacia.
A what?
Erythromalacia. What it does, it constricts the blood vessels, your arteries, and so your feet or your extremities get extremely hot and burning. And it's a progressive disease. Mine started out as just a little tingling in my feet. It really didn't bother me. Just in the nighttime, I'd notice it. And about a year later, it got to the point where I'd have to get up at night and I'd just stick my feet under a cold shower for a while and I would take care of it. It didn't bother me during the day. But it progressed over the years where it got to the point where the only way I could really be comfortable was to have my feet, I would stand in ice water in the bathtub. To sleep, I got these sleeves that I put ice packs in with Velcro straps around. I'd have to sleep with them on my feet. Coming to a class like this, anytime my feet were below my waist level, I'd be extremely uncomfortable. Couldn't wear shoes, had to give up tennis, had to give up golf. When I worked out in the gym over here, I'd work out barefoot. And it was getting very hard to meditate because I couldn't sit for any period of time. My feet would get so uncomfortable. So my life was kind of narrowing down, and I say my prayers every night, but I try not to ask for stuff. Maybe I'll ask to be more appreciative of my blessings, but I don't ask for things. And it's very short, half a minute. But about a month ago, I reached the end because I could see where my life was just going to be. I was going to be pretty much housebound. Or, I couldn't even go out for lunch anymore, nothing. No hiking. So this one night I asked, could you help me? Could you do something? God. So about 2 days later, I was on, there's a national website of the Erythromelalgia Foundation, and I've been on the site a number of times looking for treatments and everything, but nothing helps, and I've been to 3 or 4 neurologists. They provide gabapentin, or you can have a nerve block procedure, but it's not, it really doesn't help. So anyway, I've been on this website and I followed a link way down, and there was a link to which referenced a support group. So I hit that link and I went on the support group site. And there I read about a protocol called Bob's Protocol. This guy developed it, and just a layman who had erythromelalgia, and he said, what I did is I stuck my feet in a tub of hot water, like 100 to 105 degrees, and I left them there for half an hour, and it desensitized the nerves, and I got significantly better. And then he had a reference, there were some other testimonials on there. So I thought that's so counterintuitive, because what I had to do to handle the situation was put my feet in cold water, ice baths, or something like that. So I screwed up my courage, and about a month ago, I started this protocol. It was very uncomfortable. I didn't sleep for 3 days because my feet flared, is what we call it, significantly, because I was putting them in hot water. But about 2 weeks ago, I started to notice a significant improvement. And now I've improved like 80%. So what I do every night, I just, I read my emails and whatever, I stick my feet in a tub of hot water, and I can sit in this class comfortably. Now I worked out in shoes today. I can wear shoes again, and I have no doubt that it was an answer to that prayer. And the prayer was, from the heart. That was really an emotional, deep prayer. Please connect with me. Please help me. And it's like a miracle. I mean, I got my life back.
Great. That's beautiful.
Thanks, Mac.
Yeah.
And you're no longer defeated, huh?
Right. Yeah.
And it's so beautiful that you saw it through the flaring up too, because that's where a lot of people will then back off. But in healing, that's common. There's a point where things get thicker before they open up and resolve.
Yeah, I've got a great internist. I said, I'm going to do this, but I don't know if I can make it because I won't be able to sleep. So he gave me some tramadol, which didn't touch it the first couple of nights. I still couldn't sleep, but the third night it did. And so I did a full pill, then a quarter, half pill, then a quarter, and I'm off that totally. So it's really, really been something. I'm going to play tennis this Saturday.
Wow.
So prayer does work. I saw this lady on TV who had MS, and it got to the point where she couldn't walk. She was confined to her bedroom upstairs, and she had been a nun, but she had not retired as a nun, but she had been a nun. And so anyway, in her prayer and meditation, she heard this voice say, "Why don't you ask?" So she decided to ask God to lift this from her. The next morning, she was able to walk down the stairs.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a couple of times major surgeries saved, and it was through a process of getting there, of finding that it really involves body, mind, spirit. Physical, mental, emotional, psychological, psychic, spiritual, source, root, cause, level, discover that root, and quit chasing symptoms. And I found it very experientially not realizing what I was going through in the process. But when it moved like that. And that was like, after reading gynecologists, all the different diagnoses and all wanting to, whatever there. And then later, because of that experience and it's moving, I ultimately saved myself spinal surgery when I went out in the woods with clear intention to heal. And ultimately, from hardly being able to walk because of the golf and to show that it wasn't doing all the things it did. And when it moved, it went like that. And it had to do with love. And I really found that both of those answers that came through were love. And that love was the healer in both of those times. And I had an experience with my father who had come up to bring me up some wood because I'd gone out in the woods for 40 days and nights to heal this. And we're on top of like a mountain. over there, overlooking the mountains in the Olympics up there. And I had the most spiritual experience. That was like, the presence was so palpable, it was almost like jello in the air. It was that palpable. And the only thing it was clear you could see Seattle, you could see all over. It was just awesome, but it's just some things that had gone on with my father that I love dearly. And just a bumblebee was on. You could hear a huge old yellow bumblebee. And when I went back later that night, and with this couple that just decided to be in love, and I could hardly get in this hot tub with them, and then I went back to the tent, and I was worked on during the night. And when I got up, I put on my knee boots. I was laughing, crying, screaming. I mean, it had been almost 2 years since I could hardly pick my knees up. And I started laughing, and I was going, put on my knee boots, and I went down, climbing over rocks and trees down the river about 5 miles.
Oh, wow.
So I know the power, and it's because of that, that's why I can hold that energy that I know is possible of all things for almost anybody in any situation. So I always say, just borrow my confidence in you until you find it in your own experience. But I know the power that's in us to heal.
Is it possible if you only believe?
That's right.
That's a quote from the Bible that's just
Absolutely.
so right on. It's hard to think of anything else.
Yeah.
Has anybody printed a book recording miracles like these?
Recording what?
Has anyone that you know of printed a book of the miracles, of A Course in Miracles teaching, so to speak, or what you've been through? Wouldn't that be interesting to know?
That would be, I know that Mary Baker Eddy, Christian Sciences have that type of
Has
book.
that type of thing?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's
We have it too. And it's always, I remember reading it years and years ago, but I don't know if I've ever seen one with.
I don't think I have, but
Casey,
then I haven't looked for it either. So I don't know.
No.
There's a couple out there to do with prayer, not Course in Miracles based, though I don't think there is one,
Okay.
but to do with prayer, like Larry Dossie, I think has one, and there's some couple other ones, Power of Prayer, where dealing specifically with health and medical issues.
I think it
Finding
would be
healing, and
nice
there's
to
an angel
hear,
one,
or to have a book that records people's stories like yours. Like both of you, that you've
It's
gone
somewhat,
through and here's the evidence of it.
it's somewhat what I've been
Well,
writing
it's-
about because of clients too, that I found because of holding that, and when I find, because of other things I'm trained in, that's how things can move like this. And the stories and the things that we carry in our memory cells and stuff, that when you clear that, again, at that source, you go to the source root cause level, you quit chasing symptoms around, which we have a very symptom-based, what are your symptoms, and then hang a label on it, and they treat the label.
What I noticed the common thread is from Brian on down to you two is, and in some of my own stories of healing, which I don't feel I'm always able to go there, but the times there's been success, I could say that element was present, and the common element is love of the self. You had to totally accept
It is
you
absolutely.
could have that TV. Like you were worth it, it's okay, instead of like, oh no, I can't, and you, it's like instead of, I can't ask anything for me. And for you it was like, why not have that house? There's nothing saying that, like, no, I can't, I shouldn't, I can't, there was none of that there.
Larry
None of
Dawson
that
says
there.
if prayer was a pill, every doctor in the world would prescribe it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
The reason I say that love, because the first time was way back when, it was all female stuff, and they were doing hysterectomies to everybody. And I went through 3 different gynecologists wanting to do that, and the first one wound me up in the emergency room, and the doctor there was so irate at what that doctor does, so I went for another opinion, and that didn't agree, but they wanted to do a hysterectomy, and then a third one, and after the third one. Anyway, ultimately, I never had that. Because over time, I just started learning and looking within and trying to figure out what was going on and this sort of stuff. So there was nothing written back then about women's stuff. And ultimately, after going through working trainings and ministerial school and all this different stuff, and working with as hypnotherapy, working with the balance between the masculine and feminine and everything. And it was like the first time in this program, my folks came over to it. It was the first time in 40 years. And I was like 40, and somebody said, oh, in fact, several did, oh, I can tell you're your mother's daughter. That had never happened. I was like my dad. So it was that balance of that feminine that was a part of whatever was going on. And when one day, it was a cloudy day, I was feeling frumpy, but not the passing out cramps and all that stuff that was going on. It was just all at once this voice, booming voice that's come through more than a few times, that burning bush voice that said, I love being a woman. And I went, excuse me, didn't know it didn't. And that's everything about being a woman. Yeah. And that's having breasts. And that's having periods. And I went, yeah. And it was just like a cloud or curtain. It moved like this. And from that day forward, I never had to control the symptoms. After years. So it had to do with love. And that's what drove me to go into the other experience years later. That love is the answer. And I was just writing about that this very morning, in fact, about love is the answer.
Whatever is the question, love is the answer.